Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Konoha Reviews. During the E3 of this year, there were a couple of game trailers that stood out to me, and a few of them were not your major blockbuster titles, but instead the smaller type games. Telling Lies was one of them. When I saw the trailer for the first time in June and heard that it was from the same creators as the game Her Story, I knew I wanted to get this one right away. For those of you who don't know, Her Story was a very small game that was released a few years back that took many by surprise. It played on the FMV kind of game genre where you would see actual film footage from a woman being interviewed during several police hearings. You would only see a few clips at a time consisting of a few seconds to several minutes, and you could search for new clips by entering certain tags or terms in the search bar. So you were pretending like you were really going through police footage and their files. It was really cool and original, and actually had a very awesome twist once you put the pieces together in the story. Unfortunately for me, I did not get to experience that game firsthand, but instead watched a Let's Play of it on YouTube. But even so, I was still blown away, and knew that if the creators would make a similar game, I would experience this firsthand. And that is exactly what happened. Telling Lies goes for the same principle. You get access to a search engine, with hundreds of clips concerning the events and lives of 4 individuals and those in their immediate surroundings. The clips you will get to see depend on the term you put in the search engine, but you will always see the first 5 clips that comply only. This means that if a certain term you entered has 15 clips that concern that term, you will only get to see the first 5. If you want to see the other ones, you will either have to add something else to the term or try a different term entirely. This was also a feature in Her Story and works great since it lets you know if you are either onto something or not, or how broad the spectrum is of your search. The game starts with putting one search term in the search engine to begin with for you. That term is love, and you will indeed get 5 different clips that will introduce the player to all 4 main characters. The acting by the actors is very convincing and well done, and it almost sometimes feels like you're being very invasive in their private lives, but that is of course also the kind of point when one were to look at footage like this. Some of the actors you might recognize from movies like Upgrade, Prometheus, and series like Westworld or Narcos, and they all perform excellent, which helps convince the narrative. This is important because the story is entirely character-driven rather than world-building. With the viewing of the first 5 clips, you get a good glimpse of how everybody seems to be, and then you start searching on your own from there. In reality, you've only scratched but a slither of the surface of what the story will be about, and you will then have to type in new terms to find. Though names of characters or places will often get you somewhere, definitely also don't be afraid of including verbs as search terms. Saying pretty much anything about the characters or terms would be spoilers. But I can safely say to you that my first term that I put in after the love given to you for free by the game was the term smiles. And that gave me a bunch of new clips already to get the ball rolling and give you more terms and words to search for without revealing too much already. The build-up is excellent, despite the story being told in a non-linear way. A really handy new tool they have included this time is that you can click and drag on any word in the subtitles and immediately search for this. This makes it easier for some people to search, but I personally did not use this once, even though I said that it's a neat little feature. By now, many of you will know that I absolutely love detective games, and so for the first time in a long while, I pulled my trusty pen and notebook to my side again and actually started to write down words or terms that I thought would be important to search up later. Many of the times, these terms get thrown out there during the clips, and I wanted to at least finish watching the clip and also the others that came up before. In total, I wrote almost 70 words and terms in my little notebook and really felt like a cop or detective trying to figure everything out. This is actually therefore also a game I really recommend experiencing with someone else on your couch. By doing this, you can discuss theories and throw ideas around with your partner and come up with new terms and directions to search in. It really gets you involved and is fun to share with others. Now, some might say that this game is not actually a game, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that. This is definitely a game, since the game is trying to puzzle everything together and make sense of it all. I am constantly looking out for new clues or information that I haven't heard before or that suddenly makes certain events make sense. What I will agree on though is that this is a game that does not offer gameplay. There are some neat little details found on the desktop, including an old classic actual game, but 99% of your experience with this will be typing in words in the search engine and watching video clips. I believe there's around 6 hours of footage recorded, and it is all divided up in clips of a minute or less to sometimes close to 10 minutes. The cool thing here is that the clip will always start with the sentence that contains the term you searched for. This sometimes means that a clip will start 3 minutes into the actual video, but you are free to rewind to your liking. I actually did this for all the clips I searched, since I wanted to see every clip from the beginning as a whole. I could not find a button that actually let me do that, and sometimes I did spend a long time just rewinding back, which was a bit of a shame. It also should be said that even though I really loved the ability to watch the clips from the very beginning, there was of course a lot of filler and silence that you have to sit through. I personally did not mind this since I really got to live out that detective style fantasy, but there might be some people who will find that a bit boring. But again, for those people, they can just stick to the clip that begins at their search term. It also should be said that a lot of the clips are filmed like a two-way phone call, meaning there's a speaker and a receiver. But you will never hear the person that the character you see is talking to. Because of that, there's also quite a bit of silence sometimes, especially if the person on the other end is telling a long story of several minutes. What is cool though is that you can always find both clips of the people having the conversation, and suddenly because of that, the earlier conversation that you only heard from one side makes much more sense now. It even triggered me to somehow maybe get another screen device up there and play some of the footage simultaneously so that you can actually follow the conversation with both speakers, but that was even a bit too much for me. The length of the game is also very good. Her story was a lot shorter, but also cheaper, and you would have a pretty good idea of the story and the twists an hour or two in. With Telling Lies, I still had a lot of puzzle pieces to discover, and had many questions left unanswered 3 hours in, while at the same time already having come to multiple revelations and shocking twists and turns. It was really engaging, and it took me a little over 7 hours before the credits were rolling. But even then, it still showed that I only had seen around half the footage, which personally, then I don't really get how there can be 6 hours of footage as stated in the game, but I spent 7 hours, unless the two-way calls count as one. And so I will definitely give this another continuation to see what else is there, though in the end I did have a pretty good understanding of certain characters and their storyline. It even will tell you who you mostly focused on, and well, cover me guilty, but I apparently focused most on Angela Sarafian's character because, well, yeah. In the end, for me, Telling Lies was a wonderful experience and exactly what I wanted out of this game. The game is a bit more expensive, around $16, but well worth the price for those 7 to 8 hours I spent as a wannabe detective. In some ways, it feels like her story was only a tech demo, and Telling Lies was the same idea but with an actual budget and large team behind it. Despite me absolutely loving it, I can actually also understand why people would not like it because it doesn't have gameplay. But in this case, it really is a black and white story, of you liking it or not. If you like gameplay games where you actually have to be very active, then stay away from this game. If you are more into crime solving, puzzles, or story-driven games and don't mind slow pace, then definitely give this a try, or maybe first try out her story to see if this is your thing before jumping into this one. This game was actually the most difficult for me to give a number to, because it's such an abstract game in some senses. You cannot really compare this with any other, and so a verdict will be very difficult to express. In the end, I will give Telling Lies a solid 8. I am definitely a fan of this creator's work and cannot wait to see what they will do next. I do think that they can only do this type of game so many times though before it gets monotonous. So we will just have to wait and see what their next story will be in the future.